In today's world, we have to face a lot of belief, our own beliefs and those of others. We seem to be surrounded by belief, inundated by belief. What is belief? And we are going to tackle this question of belief with an issue which is all over the internet, especially Facebook. It's this question of the flat earth and the conspiracy of NASA, and whether or not human beings have gone to the moon, or whether or not we have sent probes to Mars. And it's understandable why people have doubts. What is doubt? And the origins of doubt. Doubt is actually something very useful. Doubt exists in our consciousness. It is an aspect, one of the elements of our innermost being. And it expresses itself through consciousness. And it is that little needling of our conscience which makes us question what we are told, makes us question beliefs, and makes us question what others insist are the facts. And the reason why we question is because we have no knowledge of those facts. And it is a way for our consciousness, our innermost being, to encourage us to seek gnosis, direct experiential knowledge of the facts for ourselves. This is why we doubt. This is the origins of doubt. So, naturally, we have not gone to the moon ourselves. We have not seen it with our own eyes up close from the surface of the moon. Likewise, most of us have not gone into the upper ionosphere and seen the curvature of the earth, nor have we walked around the earth stringing a yarn or a piece of string behind us, tying it to a post, then walking due west or due east or due north or due south, and returning to our origin and finding that piece of string. So we have had no way to verify for ourselves the facts. And because we have not verified the facts for ourselves, yes, there is that little doubt inside of us, that little needling question about what we are told, about the official line of NASA or what have you. And so there is truth in that doubt. The fact is, we do not possess the knowledge for ourselves. We do not possess the gnosis, the experiential knowledge of the spherical nature of this planet, or the spherical nature of the moon, or the nature of the solar system, or indeed the galaxy, because we have not experienced the facts of those things for ourselves. And because we have not experienced them for ourselves, any knowledge that we think we have about these things are simply beliefs. They're simply adopted ideas and concepts. And we've adopted them from others. We've adopted them from NASA, and we've adopted them from textbooks and from television programs and from other people and our education. But they are not knowledge. They are not gnosis. They are concepts in the mind. And the conscience knows this. Our consciousness knows that they are just concepts in the mind, that they are just ideas. And that is the source of doubt. That is Thomas. All of the disciples are symbolic. All of the apostles of Jesus are symbolic. The 12 aspects of the being are represented in each one of the 12 apostles. And doubt is expressed through Thomas. That is what he symbolizes. Now, of course, in Christianity, Thomas is shown to be a negative aspect, and that his doubt is somehow negative. And in the Bible, the way it's written and the way it's interpreted certainly sounds that way, because Jesus says, Thomas, you believe now because you have seen. Happy are those who have not seen and yet believe. This clearly is a mistranslation. Or it is happy are those in the sense of ignorance is bliss. Because Thomas is a necessary aspect of our consciousness, to be a doubting Thomas, to say, where is the evidence? Where is the experiential evidence that I can put my finger on, that I can experience directly in my own consciousness to verify the facts? This is the nature of gnosis. This is the nature of true knowledge, verifiable experiential knowledge, not just believing what anybody has told us to believe. So doubting Thomas is actually a very good, very positive aspect of our consciousness. It is what drives us in many ways to act on the longing for knowledge. The fact that we somehow are just not satisfied with the status quo, with the mainstream story, with the accepted narratives that we are told, and that we are told to believe, and that we are told to accept. But there is a problem. And the problem, of course, arises, as always, with our own ego mind. Because the ego, of course, is here to twist and corrupt and degrade and degenerate all that is true and good and right. That is its divinely ordained purpose. The ego's purpose is to obstruct and oppose and deny spirituality and our attempts to reconnect with our own divinity, our attempts to awaken. Ego's purpose is to keep us asleep. That's why it exists. It is the opposition. It is Satan. That is our own individual shaitan, our own ego mind. The ego is very clever and very subtle. And what the ego mind does is take hold of that kernel of truth, which is called our doubt. And it weaves its own story around that doubt. And that doubt is the seed, the core, the essence of that story, is this doubt in the narrative, is the doubt which is part of consciousness. It's truth. It's a fact. The fact is, very few of us have seen the curvature of the earth. The fact is, none of us has traveled to the moon, at least not with our physical bodies. That's a fact. That's undeniable. That's unquestionable. And therefore, the ego is able to weave this elaborate story or conspiracy theory around that kernel of truth. And the result is we become completely hypnotized by the story which the ego weaves for us, or that others have weaved, that we have accepted, because it rings true in our heart. Someone comes along and says the earth is flat and gives us a bunch of really convincing evidence for why it's flat, and it rings true in our heart because we haven't seen the round earth for ourselves. Or someone comes along and says the moon shot was a fake. It was all a hoax. It was all faked. And it rings true for us because we haven't been to the moon. We cannot verify the facts for ourselves. And the doubt which exists inside of us. The new narrative forms around that doubt, and we become very attached to the new narrative. This is the nature of religious dogma. This is the nature of belief. This is the nature of that fervent belief in ideas and concepts which have in their foundation, in their kernel, at their nucleus, some truth. And all religious belief have at their core some truth. There's some essence, some kernel at the core of all religious beliefs, which ring true to individuals on different levels of their consciousness. And so they become very attached to the superficial, elaborate story that has been weaved around that kernel, even if that story has no resemblance to reality. And even if that story is in 180-degree contradiction to the kernel of truth at its core, it doesn't matter. Because that's how subtle and clever the ego is. It can twist and corrupt the truth into just about anything. We see that if we observe ourselves. We can observe our own ego minds rationalizing every kind of ridiculous behavior, which under normal circumstances no rational being would accept as acceptable. And yet, the ego mind finds a way to weave a story. And the story it weaves is around a kernel of truth. And that is how the ego mind can hypnotize us into complete ignorance. And this is very much our plight at our current level of consciousness. We see the physical world, we see physical reality, we experience it even on this physical level. Touch and taste and sight and sound and smell. And we cannot help but be hypnotized and mesmerized by it all. And materialist scientists especially cannot help but believe wholeheartedly, right down to their very core, that physical reality is the substance of reality. And that is because physical reality is built on top of truth. The essence, the core of physical reality is true, it's undeniable. But the ego mind can become completely obsessed and mesmerized with that superficial, elaborated story, that physical, materialist reality, and entirely forget the essence underneath upon which it was based and on which it was built. But that essence still connects to us. That essence still speaks to us, to our consciousness, to our inner essence. And so our inner essence connects to the essence of all things, and we feel that connection, and it resonates with us. And so we become attached to the outward, physical, experiential expression of that inner essence that is connecting to us on that deep level, that is resonating with us. And this is why it is possible to resonate with completely erroneous beliefs. And that is why it is how it is in the world that you have individuals and groups calling themselves by different names of religions and different tribes and different beliefs and so on and so forth, and different creeds and cultures, as a matter of fact, willing to kill each other, willing to shed blood over their beliefs. And that is why it is that you have materialist scientists that are absolutely convinced that they know the nature of reality, and that there is no metaphysical reality, and that there is no God, and so on and so forth. And that is because they themselves have not experienced the divine. They have doubt. And their ego mind has taken what resonates with it the physical reality, which they cannot deny, this elaborated physical expression of the truth, of the essence of all things, and that is their dogma. That is their belief system. And for flat earthers, that is their belief system. It's simply what it is. And this is the nature of belief everywhere. And so it is of utmost importance for anyone on the path, anyone seeking authentic truth, to recognize that just because something resonates with you in the heart does not make it true. It simply means that it is resonating with your own doubt, with the facts, with the truth that you personally, individually, have no knowledge of the topic at hand. And because you have no knowledge of the topic at hand, you know you have no knowledge of the topic at hand. Deep down, your conscience does. And so someone comes along and presents a series of beliefs which are contrary to the popular dogma or the status quo beliefs that you have doubts about. And then the ego mind cleverly does a bait and switch and says, it's these new set of beliefs which are the truth, because they are what are resonating. And it's simply ego exploiting the facts, exploiting your doubt, taking advantage of your innermost doubting Thomas, an aspect of your being and an aspect of the consciousness. This is how clever and this is how subtle the ego mind is. And unless we observe ourselves, and unless we meditate, and unless we awaken and connect with ourselves on a deeper level, so that we know things, not by virtue of we know them, but by virtue of we connect to the higher self, the innermost being, and that it is given unto us to know. We must beware that we are not clinging to a set of beliefs as a reaction to another set of beliefs. And this is why the New Age is rife with beliefs. People believing all manner of nonsense. And they believe it in reaction to their doubts about the status quo belief systems that were likely hammered into them since childhood, whether they were raised in a Christian or a Catholic or a Muslim or a Jewish or Hindu or Buddhist, it doesn't matter. Or if they were raised atheist with no belief system, but they are faced with the dominant contemporary beliefs of society, expressed through culture and expressed through movies and television and news, etc., etc., etc. And they have no authentic knowledge of reality. And it's their doubt in this materialist, superficial, intellectual society that they live in. In reaction to that, they grab hold of these New Age beliefs, which of course resonate with them because they're resonating with their doubt. It is worthwhile noting here that many New Age beliefs are born of actual gnosis, real experiential knowledge. Again, if the ego mind can weave a story and elaborate a story around our doubt, then what do you think it's capable of elaborating and weaving around our knowledge, our experience? An example of this are individuals who have a samadhi or a moment of clarity or any kind of experience which one might call a religious experience or a spiritual experience, a being touched by the divine, having a moment of expanded consciousness, awakened consciousness, whatever you want to call it. There are moments that individuals can have, and they are profound. Anyone who has ever had anything which can be described as a spiritual or religious experience will tell you that it is a profoundly life-altering experience. Many people in the New Age have had one or two or maybe many experiences like that. And as a result, they believe themselves to be awake, or they believe themselves to be enlightened, or they believe themselves to be who knows what, the reincarnation of some master, or the reincarnation of some angel, or again, who knows what. And the reason why we say who knows what is because who knows what their own ego mind and their own mystic pride has crafted and elaborated around that experience. A belief now that they are absolutely ardent and adamant about. They cannot listen to reason. They will not listen to reason. They've had their experience, and their beliefs about it cannot be changed. Why? Because they attach themselves to the belief. They are unable to observe their own experience and know their own experience for what it was. And instead of that, they elaborate a story around the experience. The experience meant this, or the experience meant that, or I must be this, or I must be that. I. This is why it is so important for us to be aware and be in the moment and be able to experience without the running commentary of our mind, elaborating on what we are experiencing or distracting us away from it. It is that elaboration, it is that commentary which hypnotizes us and keeps us ignorant of the facts. The facts are the facts. Have you had a religious experience? Great. Have you had a spiritual experience? Wonderful. But the facts of the experience are the experience themselves. They are not the story that you believe about the experience that you've had. What we know is what we know. What we think we know is illusion. It's hypnotic, no doubt about it, but it puts us to sleep and it keeps us ignorant. It is the opposite of gnosis. Hypnosis and ignorance. And that is how clever and that is how subtle the ego mind is. And when we encounter individuals who hold on to various beliefs and they talk about things like my truth, that's my truth, they are sadly and lamentably enslaved by their own ego mind. That is the nature of subjective knowledge. To subject someone to it, to be a subject, means to be a slave, a peon, a peasant, and have the ego mind lord over us. You don't have to be a religious person to know. To be lorded over is not an ideal situation, especially if the entity who is lording over us and subjecting us to its whims has not our best interests at heart, but its own. In contrast to that, we have our innermost being, who, ironically, is our Lord and Father, our true self. And yet, he does not lord over us. We have the choice. We have the free will, moment to moment, Do we follow his guidance? Do we follow his will? Which is the path out of suffering? Which is the path to true peace and true happiness and true joy? Or do we allow ourselves to be subject to the whims and the ransoms of our ego mind? And it is so clever and it is so subtle. It is able to take the knowledge and aspects of our consciousness, of our being, and elaborate stories around them and take them and use them as a kernel at the heart of all of its lies and its enslavements of us. And that is belief. And that is why we made this video today, because it is so sad to see so many people trapped inside belief, believing that they are free and awake and conscious and spiritual and enlightened and etc., etc., etc. And it is all mystic pride, and it is all illusion, and it is something that we need to be aware of. And if we're not aware of it, we need to be made aware of it. It's not a pleasant thing to hear, but it's the truth. Thank you for watching. And if you like this video, you know what to do. And if you would like to see more videos like this and you have the means to do so, you can always offer your support to us on Patreon. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.